Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Data Sessions Episode 8. Tonight, I will let Arrow host our session. So I'm gonna pass the mic to Arrow. Arrow is one of our organizers here at Singapore Sqlpass. So take it away, Arrow.
Yeah, thank you, Pio. Let me show what we have for today's session. Right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming for this amazing session today. We have amazing speakers. We have Nilesh for the first session, and we'll talk about the modern data warehouse series on part two. And for the session two, we're having Jasmine, who are talking about how to handle with data with care. Okay. Again, if you can connect with us, there are four endpoints you can look for. We have our Facebook page, which is SQL UGSG. So there's a Facebook page you can look for. And we have our own meetup. Obviously, Microsoft SGUG. This is our meetup page. And we have our own YouTube page as well. We have a YTSG Sqlpass, and I'm one of the organizer, RO, and obviously with Pio and Asif, we are the organizer for Sqlpass. Okay. Again, a couple of events happening for this particular week. On 5th of September, we having one event called as Why Should Care About Microservices by Brandon Burns. Again, it's very exciting event coming this particular Saturday. If you enjoy on the weekends, have fun there. And again, 8th of September, we have a Kubernetes and Azure serverless services. Again, on next week, 8th September. And last one we're talking about next week is this is the eighth episode, right? And we're having something called as a data session on the 15th of September. Following week, we're having a ninth episode. Still, we are churning up with particular speakers and all. So these are the sessions we are looking for 2 weeks. Very important to highlight that as a housekeeping, please mute yourself during the sessions. Very important so that the speakers can showcase what we have. And if you have any kind of questions, you can raise in the team meetings where you can have a question you can ask there, or you can put chat box. We have in Teams, you can ask some questions there. Very important thing, very important for us to improve. So please evaluate all the sessions, both Nilesh and Jasmine, so that we can see what we have to improve and what you are actually excited. Very important thing. Last one is all the sessions are recorded so that you can watch in YouTube as well as in Facebook. So I give pass to Nilesh now. Nilesh, up to you.
Thanks, Arrow. Let me start by sharing my screen and let me know once you're able to see it. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us once again. Today, we are going to talk about the modern data warehouse using Azure. Today's session is the second part. So in case you don't know who am I'm Nilesh Kule, and here are my social coordinates. I'm one of the active Microsoft Most Valuable Professional or MVP for Microsoft Azure area. So let's look at the agenda. In the last session, we covered what are the different components of modern data warehouse. We looked at the data lake architecture, and we also looked at the storage account and Azure Data Factory. In today's session, we are going to talk about the next part, which is the Azure Databricks. And we will also look at how we can integrate some of the security practices using Azure Key Vault. And in the next one, we will move over to the Azure SQL Data Warehouse. So in today's part 2, our focus would be Databricks and the Key Vault. Let's quickly look at the summary of the previous one, where we looked at data lake storage and Azure Data Factory. So in the data lake storage or ADLS, we looked at the main features, which are the petabyte scale storage. It is similar to if you worked on Amazon, the S3, which gives you object storage, The advantage with ADLS is we also have something called as hierarchical namespace, which allows us to do operations more on the level of, let's say, folders or file systems, and we get actual file system representation of the data and not just a logical separation in terms of the files and the names of the files. And we also looked at some of the main features of Azure Data Factory or ADF. We looked at how it can be used as a cloud-only ETL tool, or it can also be used as a hybrid ETL tool, where it can connect to multiple types of data sources, be it on-premise. It could be things like structured data, semi-structured data. And in the example, we looked at the code-free UI, where I pulled in data from one of the publicly available data sets on GitHub, and we used it to store as a CSV file as well as JSON file. And we also briefly looked at the monitoring and management aspect of the Data Factory. While we were closing the session, there were some things which I wanted to show. So let me quickly go back to Data Factory and show some of the things that I missed or I could not complete last time. The first thing is the monitoring part. So if you remember, when we log in into the Data Factory, this is the user interface we are provided with, where we have the option to author the pipelines or data sets and build integration pipelines. We also have the option to monitor, and the current screen where we are looking is the manage part, where we manage different services, linked services, and also things like trigger and global parameters. So let's go into the monitoring aspect and look at some of the pipelines which have run in the past. So I'm currently looking at the last 30 days of pipelines, and let's look at the first one. So this one was run on 18th, and this did the copy CSV part. If I click on that, you can see that I get the activity run details. And when I hover over, let me zoom in a little bit. If I hover over at the activity, so this pipeline, it can contain multiple activities. In this particular case, there is only one activity. So it is showing me only one activity at the bottom. So I can look at what were the inputs which were given to this activity. I can look at what were the outputs, and I can also look at some of the details. This is one of the good features which I like about Data Factory and the details it provides in the monitoring. So you can look here that I was using a HTTP connection as my input data source. And then I was looking at storing this data into the data lake storage. So it showed us here how much data was written. It's very minuscule data in this case, just about 8 MB, but still we get a higher level overview in terms of how much data got written as part of this particular pipeline execution, how many files were read, how many files got written, what were the peak connection, what was the throughput, and also in terms of costing. So how much time it took in terms of the duration for execution, and then from the point of how much charge we will get or how much cost would incur for running this pipeline, we can see that it used the data integration units as 4, and there was only one parallel copy. We can control this to an extent. So if we are using the self-hosted runtime or auto-resolver runtime, let me go into the copy CSV pipeline and this activity here. We can see that in the settings part, there is an option to specify how many integration units we want. And we will also get number of data integration units for copy activity, approximate charge. So this is like a guidance figure, how much would be charged for executing. And then if we know that our activity takes more than, let's say, 2 or 4 data integration units, we can specify this here. I've left it as auto, which means that based on the number of files or the volume of data, this will scale automatically. So that was about the data factory that I wanted to show. Now let's move on to the current topic or today's topic about Azure Databricks. So what is Azure Databricks? Databricks is a company which maintains the code base for Apache Spark, and they also provide analytics platform. So from the point of Azure Databricks, it's a unified analytics platform which gives capabilities like, if you look at the Databricks itself, it has integration with multiple cloud providers. So it, at the infrastructure level, it can integrate with Azure. It also integrates with other cloud providers with native integrations. It can support different data sources, like we can integrate IoT or streaming data. Cloud storage data can be integrated. Traditional Hadoop storage, like if you are having, let's say, Mapr, Cloudera, or Hortonworks based Hadoop installations, we can integrate that as well. And if we are talking about Azure, it can also work with the HD Insight, which is similar to the Hortonworks on Azure. And then other sources like data warehouse. It also has a very reliable way of connecting different data pipelines. So we can do transactions, indexing, and this is done using Apache Spark, which is the framework, or which is a project which is quite popular for its in-memory processing. Spark is known for its processing power, and it's you can find Spark integrations with almost most of the leading tools nowadays and platforms. Spark has also features where it can provide you libraries for machine learning and AI related things, and it does this on a distributed platform. The best part about Spark is it works distributed, and it tries to reduce the overhead of doing things in the disk level. So we will look at some of the features of Spark in the next section. So all these pre-packaged ML frameworks, they come built in with the Databricks runtime. So what we get is a fully packaged Spark as a service on cloud or on your infrastructure. And we don't have to worry about setting up the cluster. We don't have to worry about creating those integrations and connections between different nodes. This is all managed by Databricks. And it gives us, on top of that, management features like we get notebooks, we get jobs features, we get monitoring, things around security and compliance can also be integrated on top of this Databricks runtime. So we will look at all this during today's session. Apart from this, Databricks also released a project recently, about I think 6 months back. This is called Delta Lake. So Delta Lake is a storage layer which gives the asset transactions on Spark. If we look at the previous versions, like if we are doing big data processing on, let's say, Hadoop-based processing with Hortonworks or Cloudera, we might be using HDFS as our storage layer, and we might be using something like Hive. And they don't have by default the capabilities to do asset transactions. So the recent versions of Hive has support for asset transactions, but what Delta Lake does is it takes it to next level, and this is built into the framework called as Delta Lake. This supports streaming as well as batch processing. And if you remember from the last session, we talked about zoning our data lake. So we had different sections for the ingestion layer or raw zone, then the process zone, and then finally the aggregated or curated zone. In this case, Delta Lake likes to refer it as bronze zone, silver zone, and gold zone. So the terminology might be different, but it's essentially having these different zones for different type of data. And this again integrates with the cloud sources as well as the HDFS integration is there. And we can integrate Delta with analytical and machine learning processing. Some of the other features of Delta includes schema enforcement. So we can say that if we are ingesting data into a table, it can enforce the schema and it can identify bad records, and it will take care of not ingesting records which don't meet the minimum data quality levels. There is also a feature called as time travel, where let's say we are continuously integrating data into our Delta Lake, and we want to look at a snapshot of data at a particular point in time in the past. So I can say my data as of today, let's say I get every day a snapshot or new changes into my table, but I want to see what was the state of my data 2 days back. So using the time travel feature, I can look at that snapshot of a couple of days back. So some of these features and the other capabilities of Delta are available in this link which I have provided. Now let's go and look at some of the benefits of using Spark. Why Spark is so important. Last week we had this session after my part 1 where we looked at how the SQL Server 2019 has Spark integration and how it can support Spark. So it's not just that we are using Spark for big data processing only. Even in RDBMS like SQL Server, now we are trying to integrate Spark. So some of the reasons why Spark is very popular especially in terms of data processing, is because of its speed. There is a saying, or there is this claim by the Databricks or Spark community that it can run 100 times faster as compared to MapReduce. And the reason for that is it tries to do everything in memory. We know that every time we have to interface with the disk, there is that IO overhead. And by eliminating that IO overhead, Spark tries to do these computations across the nodes in your cluster. And it can work with these collections using distributed APIs. So it offers a very easy to use API. It has support for multiple languages. So by default, it supports Java, Scala. You have Python support, R, and of late, there is also support for C#. Nowadays, we also find notebooks which are written in C# with Spark as the runtime. It also has more than 100 of operators, and it offers a unified execution engine. So it gives us high-level libraries to support SQL queries, streaming, machine learning, graph processing. Before the advent of Spark, if we wanted to do, let's say, big data processing for SQL data or CSV type of data, we had to do MapReduce. If we wanted to do streaming, there was Flume or some other tool to be used. For machine learning, there was other libraries. So what Spark tried to do was to bring all these different libraries or different modes of processing into a unified layer. And best of all, it runs everywhere. So it runs on Hadoop, it can run standalone, it can run on these engines like Mesos, Kubernetes, and now it also runs on the cloud. So back when Spark became popular, or when it was gaining popularity, this particular post was very much responsible, I would say, for that. It broke the record for the largest sorting, large-scale sorting, which is called as the terabyte sort. So if you look at the statistics here, the MapReduce, it was taking on a 2100 node 72 minutes to do 1 terabyte of sort, or just about 102 terabytes. The same kind of processing with just 206 nodes, Spark managed to do that in 23 minutes. So that was the kind of benchmark it set. And this benchmark is as of 2014. Over the years, this performance has only grown better and better. So let's look at some of the reasons, or how does Spark manage to achieve this. In terms of the APIs itself, or the different components that Spark supports, there is the support for DataSet data frame and what it calls as the resilient distributed disk, or RDDs. So what this RDDs allows us to do is it gives us data lineage as well as resiliency. So let's say there is a processing which is going on. Spark has initiated some executors and processes, and data processing is running. And one of the nodes where this processing is going is impacted. Something goes wrong with that node. Spark will automatically identify that this particular node has gone bad, and it will schedule that workload on some other available node. So it will automatically try to build its resiliency into the data processing. And it does all this by distributing the data as a collection. So if you look at the diagram here, Spark has what is called as the Spark context, which is the entry point to your Spark application. So this is like your main method. And there is this Spark driver, which is like your master slave kind of architecture. So if we look at master, Spark driver is like your master, and this will spawn multiple jobs which are called as executors. And the actual processing would happen on different nodes, which is done using these executors. So we were having different kinds of APIs or different kinds of entry points some time back. So if you were working with just pure RDDs, there was this Spark context. If you were working with SQL data, there was SQL context. If you were working with streaming, there was a streaming context. This again has been unified recently. Recently, in a sense, it's been more than 2 years. This has been unified into one single entry point, which is called as Spark Session now. And then there are transformations and actions. So transformations are the lazy operations. If you work with Java 8, for example, or if you work with C#, these languages, they have this feature where it can do lazy evaluation. So we just build a series of operations, and until action is called, or until a terminal operation is called, nothing happens. It just builds a graph of activities. So that is what these transformations are also doing. And then action is something that actually triggers the processing. So let's look at some of the common transformations. We have things like map, flat map, filter, distinct, and the others which are mentioned here. So these are pretty much similar to Java 8 operators as well. If we have worked with Java 8 streams, we have similar constructs there as well. And then in terms of the actions, we have things which will give us the final result, like doing a count or counting by value, taking a certain number of records, doing a top operation, or writing the results to an external data store, like saving it as a file or writing it to a database. So with that, I think that's the end of theory on Spark. Let's go into the demo mode and see how we can use this feature with Databricks. So I will start by going into how to create a Databricks cluster. I've created one, but again, to show the process of getting this started, I'll show how to get Azure Databricks. So similar to all other resources that we create, we go into the Azure portal and we select the type of Azure Databricks service. This is a managed offering. We would select which is the subscription, then the resource group. So let me just pick one here. And then the workspace name. So I can call this as Sqlpass SG Demo 2, and then the location. And once I have chosen this, I can choose what type of the pricing tier do I want. In terms of standard, I get Apache Spark cluster and security with Azure AD. If I use the premium option, then I get advanced features like role-based access control. And there is also a trial version. So based on our needs, we can choose either a standard or premium. And then in the networking, we can choose whether we want to install it in like a public workspace, or we want to install it in our own virtual network or VNet. And then we can define the tags and create this. So I've already created this in the interest of time because it takes some time to provision this workspace. Once I have the workspace created, I can go into the details of that. So when I click on the name of my particular workspace or Azure Databricks service, I would be presented with the similar management UI or the control plane, which we saw earlier when we were doing the ADLS as well as Data Factory. So we get these common features or common settings related to this. And then there is this launch workspace option. So launch workspace takes us into a different workspace, which is managed by Databricks. It integrates into our Azure portal, but this is a service which is built on top of the Databricks components. So what we get is the home screen, and we have the workspace option here. Let me zoom in again. We have the recent option, then there is data and the clusters. So when we come into the workspace, the first thing we would like to do is to create a cluster. Workspace is just like a container, which will provide us some security features. And within that, we have the option to create multiple clusters. Let's click on create cluster here. And let's say SQL Pass live demo. So in terms of the cluster types or cluster mode, we have two types of cluster. One is the standard one, the other one is high concurrency. Standard clusters are meant for the job, like regular jobs kind of clusters. If we want to have automated jobs which run, and after the job is finished, we don't really need that cluster to be up and running. So let's say I'm doing my processing every morning, or I have a processing which needs to be done every Monday of every week. And then the rest of the week, I don't really need that cluster. I can use the standard cluster. High concurrency cluster is used for machine learning or exploratory analysis kind of scenarios where you have data scientists and data engineers working continuously on that cluster. And if I choose the high concurrency, I can also choose a pool. So instead of, it's similar to the SQL pool. So instead of creating all the resources at once, we can create a pool of resources and we can distribute those resources across the pool. So let me just select standard here. And then we have the Databricks runtime. Databricks runtime is the package which comes with the version of Scala and Spark. So we can see here that there are different versions of the Databricks runtime. The most current one is 7.2. We also have the ML version of that, which has GPU support. So when we create this cluster, the VMs which will be provisioned behind the scenes would have GPU support on them. And then we also have the option to select which version of Scala we are going to use. So let's say we can also look at the remaining ones. So you can see here that the earliest version of Scala that is available is 2.11 and Spark is 2.4.3 and the latest Spark version is 3.0 with Scala 2.12. So let's go with 7 version here. We also have the Python support. So you can see here that in this particular version of Databricks runtime 7.0, we have only support for Python 3. And then we have the autopilot or auto scaling option. So we can enable auto scaling and we can say if there is no activity or the cluster is inactive for, let's say, 60 minutes, I want to terminate the cluster. And after that, we can choose what is the size of the worker or the master node and what is the size for the driver node. Sorry, the driver is the master and worker is the executor nodes or the workers. So we can have different sizes. Basically, you need to have more processing power where the processing is happening. So your workers would be more in size or slightly higher in size as compared to that of the driver, because driver is the one who is coordinating these distributed processing. So you might not need too much power or too much capacity on your driver, but a worker would require more capacity. And then we can define our range. What is the minimum number of workers and what is the maximum number of workers we want to have. And with that, we can also go into the details, advanced, and we can provide some Spark configurations. So Spark allows us to override some of the configurations. If I want to override any of the default Spark configurations, I can provide something like, if I want to use, in this case, the example is that of a cryo serializer. If I want to use cryo serializer as my default serializer for all my Spark objects, I can override the default settings here. And I can provide some environment variables. And with all those settings, we can go ahead and create the cluster. Again, in the interest of time, I have created a couple of clusters here. So let's look at the first cluster, which is the standard one. Currently, this is terminated. So let me go and start the cluster. And while it is getting started, we can also look at some of the other features that this UI provides. So for this particular cluster now, I can install additional library. I can choose from the available options, like I can upload my own jar. I can upload Python egg files or wheel files. I can store the libraries or executables in what this Databricks calls as a DBFS file system or Databricks file system. We can put the files here. We can also get it from package managers like Maven, or we can store them directly under the workspace. Then we also have the option to look at the Spark UI. So if we are running Spark, let's say in standalone mode, or if we have run Spark on, let's say Hortonworks cluster in the past, we know that Spark provides a UI using which we can see what processing happened or what were the steps that happened during the job processing. So we can look at a similar UI using this Spark UI option. We also get the logs for drivers, and we also get access to different metrics. And on the management side, we have settings using which we can control. Let's say for the individual user level, I have integration into Git. I can integrate my code or the notebooks that I create into Git or other supported source control systems directly. Right now, Azure DevOps, Bitbucket, and GitHub are supported. Then we can also define some notebook settings, like do we want to have some tips provided Spark. So automatically, like IntelliSense, you will get tips based on the steps you are executing and other options here which are available. And then there is something called as access token. Access token is like a personal access token which we can use to integrate our cluster or Databricks workspace with other services. So I will come to this a little later when I will show the integration between the data factory and the Databricks cluster. So let's go back into other settings. Apart from the user, if we have the admin privilege, we can also manage the whole workspace. So if I have like the owner or the administrative privilege, I can add more users to this workspace. I can create groups. So I can create, like currently there is admins group. I can add more groups here and I can say like a developer group or a tester or a data scientist kind of groups. I can also define settings for the storage, and then I can check at a very specific levels like clusters, pools, jobs. Do I want to enable fine-grained control access? When it comes to the tables and personal access tokens, do I also want to control those? So all this can be controlled and managed using the admin user interface. And then we also have integration and the security features, like I can integrate with third-party services, container services I can integrate, and I can enable or disable these settings like do I want to enable exporting the notebook, for example. In some cases, you might want the users not to download any content from your notebook. In that case, you can disable the option to export your data or the contents of your notebook. So all these features are available at the admin level, and then we have some other settings here as well. Now let's look at the next feature. So let's go back to the cluster and see if it has started. It is still trying to start. I can also do same thing from, sorry, the management part. I can also do it from the edit permissions. So here I can specify who can manage my cluster. So I have created this cluster, and then I can assign, let's say I have multiple users in my workspace who are the admins for that cluster, who can manage the cluster. And then at a user level, again, I can give a very fine-grained permission to say user can attach to this cluster. So I can separate. The best part I like about Databricks is you don't create your notebooks or your processing pipelines and attach it directly to the cluster. These are two separate things. So you can have the cluster independent and your processing pipeline or your code independent, and at runtime you can decide which cluster you want to attach it to. So I can give those kind of permissions saying a particular user, he can attach to this cluster. In terms of managing the cluster and restarting the cluster, I can also manage that part. So I can say only selected users have the permission to restart the cluster, and very few users can have the permission to manage the cluster. So now the cluster is up and running, and I had created this cluster with 3 nodes. So we can see the driver size is DS3v2 and the worker size is also the same here, and I created it with 7.0 version. Once I have the cluster, I can then go into my workspace, and there are 2 types of workspaces. One is the shared one, which is shared across all the users, and then there is user specific workspace. So I have created some notebooks in my user specific workspace here. Let me open the first one. So if you have worked on, let's say, Jupyter, for example, and if you are aware of the notebook concept, this is exactly similar. You get in your workspace an option to create different things. So if I go and create, I can create a library, I can create a folder, I can create a machine learning experiment, or I can create a notebook. So I've created a notebook here, and when I go to create a notebook, you will find that, let me give a name here, sample notebook. I get a choice to choose the default language. So I can choose at this moment, based on my Databricks runtime, support for Python, Scala, SQL, and R. So any of these languages can be my default language. And if I want, at this time itself, I can attach this to a cluster, or I can just leave this and at later point of time, I can attach that to the cluster. So this particular notebook is a Scala notebook. And then inside the notebook, I have these cells. So I can just go here, click on the plus sign, and I will get a cell created. These are called as magic cells. So they are exactly similar to your Jupyter notebook. And I can create things like a markdown content here. I can put a percentage sign and then the type of the language or the interpreter. In this case, it's markdown. I've given the header as notebook to process CSV data. And then I can define, since it's a Scala notebook, the default language, the variables or the elements of my Scala program. So I'm creating 3 different variables here. One is for the storage account, the other one is for file system, and third one is for directory name. So for this example, instead of using the COVID dataset, I will use the movie lens dataset. The COVID dataset that I used last time was very small, I think less than 20 MB, and it's not really suitable for big data processing. So what I've done here is I'm using the movie lens dataset, which is one of the publicly available dataset, and I'm using, there are different options here. You have a small set which contains 100,000 ratings. There are 3,600 tags. It's about movies, ratings, and let me show you what are the different categories it has. It has the genome score. There are genome tags. There are links to the different movies. The movies details itself, movie ratings, and the tags. So these are the different files available as CSV files in that dataset. And the one related to ratings is about 725 MB, and the one for genome is about 400 MB in size. So that's one of the reasons why I chose this slightly bigger file size or dataset. Again, by no means 700 MB is big data related, but just to give you a sense of what we can achieve with Spark, I've used a slightly bigger dataset here. So in this, what I'm doing is once I have these variables defined, I want to access this data. Now this data is stored in my data lake storage account, which I created in the last session. So there is my blob containers or the file system. The name of the file system is ML latest, and there is a folder called movie lens inside this ML latest file system, and I have deposited all these files inside that. So in order to connect to that, I need to provide the storage account key. This is one option using which the Databricks or Spark can connect. Azure Databricks can connect to ADLS. There is also service principal method. We can also use OAuth. This is the simplest method which is available. That's why I've used this. But in a more complex and production scenario, you might want to use service principal, which gives you better control. Because if you give the storage account access key, it's like you are giving keys to your whole storage account to everybody. So I would recommend that in the references, I've given the other options which are available. So try to use that. But for the purpose of this demo, we will use the storage account key. And then we access this using the ABFS secure file system. So this is a driver or protocol which is optimized for data lake storage Gen 2. And the native integration is there between the Databricks and ADLS. So this makes the integration between the Databricks and our storage layer much more faster or performant. Then we have this syntax where we provide what is the file system name, what is the storage account name, and which is the directory we want to source our data from. So in order to get the data or read the data using Spark, this is what I was saying earlier, that if you have worked on C# Link or let's say Java 8 API, you will find this similar, the streams API of Java or the fluent interface kind of syntax. So I start with Spark. I say I want to read the data. I provide different options like does my data file, which is ratings.csv here, does it have a header, and do I need to infer the schema? So if there is a header, Spark can automatically infer the schema based on the header information. So let me just clear all this state and results and run the complete thing. So while it is running, let's go into the next steps. Once I have this, the result of this would be Spark would read this into a data frame, which is like a distributed table, or I get a collection of data rows. Then I can run show command on that to show, I think by default it shows 20 records. And then I can also use within the Databricks notebook the display function, which will show all the information. So the default show will give me only 20 records, whereas display will give me more than 20 records. The default for display is 1000 rows. So I can see my data here, and then I can also do things like count. This is the terminal operator or the action which I talked earlier. Now what I want to do is I want to show some of the performance benefits we get by using the modern day file types. Like there is the Parquet file system or file type, there is ORC. These are the row columnar or columnar storage, where instead of storing the data as rows, they store it in columns. And by using things like compression and the techniques of compression for different data types, these file types, they are able to reduce the amount of data or the disk usage. So let me start by writing this in different formats. So I'm reading the complete ratings.csv file, which is about 750 MB, and then I write it. So for writing, I use that reference of the data frame, which I got earlier. I use the write method, and I want to overwrite. If the file exists, I will get an error here because of the way Spark works. So in the mode, I'm giving the mode as overwrite, and I specify the file type as CSV. So again, I'm writing it back as CSV itself for some performance optimizations or to do the comparisons. And then I provide the same syntax to access that file system in my ADLS. The additional part here is I have given a folder name or directory name, which is CSV output. Same way, I go and write the data in Parquet format. So you see here that I'm not changing my reference. My data frame reference still remains the same. It is just that I'm writing it in multiple formats. We started with CSV, then we changed the mode or the type of file to Parquet here, and I'm writing it into a folder called Parquet output. Then for the ORC, I'm writing it into a folder called ORC output. And we also store it into the Delta format. This is the Databricks Delta, which I talked when we introduced the Databricks service. So this is written into Delta output. And on this data frame that I got initially, I can also do things like filtering. So I got all the records. I wrote all those records to these different file formats. Now I want to see a filtered set of records. So I can use a function .filter, and I can give my condition here. So I know that in my data set, there is a column called as rating, and it has numeric values. So I want to filter all those records or all those ratings which are greater than or equal to 3. So you can see that we read a CSV file, but we are treating it as a collection here, and we are able to do filtering just like we would do in Java or in C#. This is also similar in Python. So if you were using the data frames in Python, you would have something similar. So the API of Spark, because it supports these multiple languages, it would be more or less the same. The functions would be similar. The syntax of the language would be slightly different. And finally, I'm also doing a count here. So when I ran all of this, this ran successfully. So you can see that the final output here, it took about 5.68 seconds just for getting this count. And each of these cells, they also have the timing. How much time did it take to write these operations? Now let's move on to the second part of this. I've written this data and I want to read that data. So let me go into the workspace again, and I have the querying part or the query performance part here. So I'm using the same initial steps in order to connect to my ADLS storage. I have those three variables, the file system name, folder name, and the directory name. And then I connect using my storage account key. Let's start by reading the complete CSV file. So again, let's go clear everything. And let's run the complete notebook. And what I would like to do here is to see how much time does it take to read this data in different formats? So I'm reading the CSV data here. Then on that CSV data frame, I'm doing a filter for all those ratings which are greater than 4. And finally, I'm also doing some sort of aggregation. So I do a grouping on the user ID, and I want to see who are the users with most ratings here. I do a count and then order by descending count and the rating. I'm going to group those users to find who is the user with most ratings. And similarly, I do the same 3-step process: read the data, then select the specific column, user ID and rating, having this rating filter, and then the aggregation for Parquet. Then I do the same thing for ORC and Delta. So what I want to show here is the amount of time it takes for these activities. So let's start by looking at the first one, CSV file. So you see here that it took 8 seconds to read. Then it took 0.4 seconds to do this filtering. And for the aggregation, it took about 7.9 seconds. So closely about 7 seconds. When it came to Parquet, it took 0.66 seconds to read the same data from the disk. Then it took 0.3 seconds to do the filter. Actually, filter doesn't matter here because it's it's not an action. It's a transformation. So it won't actually trigger until somebody calls an action on that. So that action happens in the next step. So that is the part we should be looking at. So for Parquet, it took again around 9 seconds to aggregate. And in ORC, to read the data, it took less than a second. It's the same data. So if you remember when we wrote the data, it's same 750 MB data written in different formats, but you see the difference in terms of reading. This is because the way it's stored and the way it's compressed. And then in terms of doing the aggregation, it took 38 seconds, and then the Delta part. So when it came to Delta, it took 0.5 seconds to read, and for the aggregation, it took about 2.5 seconds. So we see the difference in reading the data as well as aggregating the data based on the different type of file that we are using. I would like to also show how does this happen. And in the Databricks, also in Spark, we have this option to look at the resource usage. So let's start with CSV, the first one. So if I look at these Spark jobs here, I can go and view what exactly happened. And I can look at the DAG, or what is called as the directed acrylic graph, what steps it took to come to this particular stage. And it will show me what exactly happened in different stages. So you can see here that in the second 22 stage, there is the input data, which is 725 MB. So whole of that CSV file is read here. And if I go into the next one, let's look at the ORC one. Let me just minimize this. So you can see that ORC picked up only 46.4 MB, so less than 50 MB. This is because we have that filtering. We are filtering based on the rating value, as well as there is this partition pruning happening and the predicate pushdown. In this case, I have not partitioned the data. I also have another notebook where if I go into the partitioned one, I can define a partition. So when I store the data, I can say use one of the columns in my data set as the partition key. So let's go into the CSV, or I'm using the same partition key everywhere. So I read the same data like earlier, but while writing, say for example in CSV, I'm saying partition this by rating. So what would happen is when it is getting written, we can see, let's look at Delta partition. There would be a physical folder which is created, like the name of the column which we are using for partitioning and the value of the column. So physically, data would be stored in these folders and directories, and that way it would be able to put only the data for that particular rating in that folder. So when we read this data, Spark is optimized to read only the partition which we are requesting. So if I say, get me all the data which is having rating greater than 3, it would ignore all the partitions which are like 1 or 0.5, 1.5, all those below 3, and it will filter only the partitions which are relevant here. So that is another performance benefit we get by using the partitioning feature. The next thing I wanted to show you was in the clusters about the auto scaling. So I tried to run something which was taking more resources. I started with initially 3 clusters or 3 nodes, and then I gave the max size as 5, and I tried to run a machine learning algorithm yesterday night, and you can see here. So it is auto scaling from 2 up to 5 workers. So it realized here that I think this is today itself, not yesterday. Yeah. In this case, what happened is because I enabled auto scaling, the Databricks runtime is able to identify that 2 nodes or 3 nodes are not sufficient for my processing, and it automatically scaled it to 5 nodes. And same way, when the resizing was completed and when the processing was completed, and these 5 nodes were no longer required, it is able to scale down again. And when nothing is required, it will terminate. If I give the termination time, it can also terminate the whole cluster. So we can do this processing only when required and then terminate the whole cluster. This is another good feature of the Databricks runtime and the Databricks clusters. So with that, I think I covered most of the parts. Let me show you the attachment part where I can attach the notebook. That's one thing I didn't show. So I have 2 clusters. If you look at the clusters earlier, there are 2 clusters which are currently available. One is running, which is the current one, and the other one, high concurrency, is currently shut down. So what I can do is this particular notebook currently is attached to the running cluster. I can say run it on the other one. So that is the separation I get in terms of the compute and the way the processing is or the code is written. I can decide at runtime which cluster I want to target to. The last thing I would like to show is how this can integrate with our complete pipeline in the modern data warehouse. So let's say I build this processing and I want to schedule this processing. There are multiple options using which I can schedule. First one is using the Databricks itself or Azure Databricks, where I have the option to schedule jobs. So I can create a job here and I can choose what kind of job I want. So let's say scheduled movie rating analysis, and I can select either a notebook. If I want a jar, I can select a jar as well. So I can, it's not just the notebooks or the interactive way we can deploy things on the Databricks. If I have a jar which is created, let's say you have been working on Hortonworks or Cloudera and you have built a lot of jars for your existing projects, these can be migrated here and deployed onto the Azure Databricks. And we can set that jar location which we want to run. So in our case, we will use the notebooks approach, and I can select, let's say, the query partitioned performance. This is the notebook I want to run. I can pass the parameters if I want. If my notebooks takes any parameters, input parameters, I can define them as key value pairs here, and I can also pass a JSON string for those same parameters, and I can schedule. So this would be like a cron schedule. I can define every hour, every day, every minute, or every month, whatever is my schedule that I want to schedule this job to run. The other option is this can be triggered from Data Factory. I can integrate Databricks and Data Factory together. So for that purpose, I need to generate that pad token. So I can go here under the user setting and generate a new token And using that token, I can link the Databricks cluster to the data factory. So I've already generated this token. So let me just show what comes up when you create a token. I need to give some comment. I can define the lifetime of this token as well. So I can say this is valid for 90 days. And after that, that token will be automatically recycled. So this token, once it is generated, I will get a one-time token value or pad token, which I need to store somewhere. So for that purpose, I'm using Azure Key Vault. So if I go back into our different services, Azure Key Vault is the key vault. So it provides different services where we can securely store keys, secrets, and certificates. And if you have used something like HashiCorp, this is similar to that, where our secure data, like the connection strings, if we have SSL certificates, those can be stored securely in the key vault, and we can define in the access control who can access the key vault. So we can have the role-based access to say a particular service or a particular identity has access to the key vault. And then on top of that, even if you have the access to the key vault, you still need to have access to perform specific operations. So the kind of operations that we have is the permissions for keys, the permissions for secrets, and permissions for the certificates. So I can say who has access to do like a get operation, list operation, update, create, delete, or all these, whatever is listed. In case of keys, same way for secrets, I can define what level of information or what level of access can be granted to a particular user or service principal. So I've already gone ahead and given these permissions to the identity which is associated to my Databricks instance, and I've created two secrets here. The first one I already used, which is the storage account key. So if you look at my notebook here, and if you look at this key, this is the key I'm using, storage account key, which is the actual storage account key from my ADLS storage account. So again, I'm not exposing the key anywhere. No one knows what is the value, maybe except for one admin or one individual. This again can be automated. I can build a pipeline if it is part of CI/CD to rotate my storage account keys and automatically update that key in this key vault. So in a very secure manner, I am connecting to my storage account here. I'm not exposing any of the secrets. And same way, I'm doing it for the pad token. So I've taken the pad token value and stored it as a secret value inside the key. Okay, somebody's singing. Thank you. Okay, so we had that.
Sorry, Nilesh, do you mind unmuting yourself? I just mute everyone else. Sorry about that. Nilesh? Nilesh? Sorry, you're still mute? Nilesh? Nilesh?
Hello.
There you go. Sorry
Yeah.
about that. I had to mute everyone because there was some noise coming in. Sorry about that.
Yeah. I'll just need a couple more minutes, Pio.
Yeah,
I'm almost done. Yeah. Okay. So if you remember from the last session on the data factory, every time we want to connect to an external service, we need to create a link service. So here I have created a link service to Azure Databricks, and in the connection settings, since it is linked to my Azure subscription, I can choose that workspace for the Databricks, and I can provide the access token. So the access token can be picked up from this Azure Key Vault, and I can select which Key Vault service I want, what is the name of the secret, and then I will be also able to choose the cluster on which I want to schedule my workload, or I want to run the pipeline. I can create a new cluster, or I can use the existing cluster. So currently I have those two existing clusters, so I can choose one of them. Let me just show this access token based approach. Okay, something happened in the settings, but when setting this up, I will not save these settings. I will be able to see the existing clusters and I can choose those clusters. So once I have already created this connection in my pipeline, I can go and create a pipeline where I have here. I can directly choose from Databricks. Do I want to run a notebook? Do I want to run jar, or do I want to run Python? So I've chosen notebook option here. Just drag and drop this activity. And in the configuration, I choose which service I want to use. And in the settings, I need to specify which notebook I want to run. So the same notebook, which is available in my workspace, I can choose that. And then if I want to pass any additional libraries, any parameters, I can pass them here, and I can add a trigger. I can schedule this to run on a scheduled basis. This we already saw last time. If you want to create a schedule trigger, how to create it. So I will get the options to choose, and that way I can trigger from the data factory some jobs or some notebooks to run on schedule basis on the Azure Databricks. So with that, let's go back to the presentation. So we looked at all these things. We looked at how to create the Databricks cluster, the Databricks runtime, and the support for different management features. We looked at how to investigate the amount of input and output data that is used for each of the tasks or each of the jobs. We also looked at this timeline and the DAG, which is generated by Spark. In terms of performance, this is what I try to show, like what is the performance for non-partition data using CSV file, how much time does it take to load, and in case of partition data, I didn't run the partition notebook, but it is similar. And then in terms of aggregation, how does different files types they perform when we aggregate the data. We also looked at the key vault, the different ways in which we can use the key vault. So in summary, what Databricks provides us is a very collaborative Spark-based analytical service. It gives us different types of clusters, automated one, interactive one, the pools as well. We can also auto scale, and we can also have this fine-grained access controls on who can attach the notebooks, who can run the notebooks, and admin kind of features. So in terms of references, I've provided some references here to the Azure Databricks. There are two types of Databricks documentation available. One which is purely linked with Microsoft Azure, and there is also independent documentation provided by Databricks. So I've given links to both of these, and then the secret scope which I used, Apache Spark, as well as the movie lens dataset. If you like using the learning paths of Microsoft Docs, there is data engineering with Azure Databricks, which is available. You can refer to this. And that's all from my side. These are the things where you can find me on social media, and feel free to connect. I think that's it, Pio.
Awesome session, man.
Questions?
I have one, because you showed the performance between the different type of data types, right? So
Yeah.
from that we saw Parquet performed the best among the three, right? Is there a specific scenario for using ORC, Delta, or Avro, or is it does it always hold true that Parquet performs better no matter how no matter the data size and data types?
It depends on the type of data you're processing. So Parquet is very well integrated with Spark, and that's why we see that the performance of Parquet is better. So let me just go back to the slide. But you also have things which are like, if you're coming from Hortonworks background, When Hortonworks and Cloudera were separate, they put a lot of effort in making ORC better. So if you already have, let's say, Hortonworks cluster on premise, or you're using something like HD Insight, you might have better performance with ORC. The compression in ORC is slightly better compared to that of Parquet, but the performance of both these are more or less similar. It depends, in my opinion, the type of data also you have, like the compression which will be applied on individual columns. If you have a lot of textual data as compared to a lot of numeric data, you will see different compression rate and you will see different performance as well. So the Parquet ORC, these are quite popular. Delta is based on Parquet itself. So Delta is like a storage layer which Databricks has built. They provide easy scaffolding around their runtime, or the Delta project, which is their open source. It is using by default Parquet as a storage behind the scenes. And Parquet also has integration with other things. Like if you're using streaming, I think most of the people, they prefer to use Parquet. So it would depend on your end-to-end use case. What kind of data are you really working with?
Yeah, Nilesh, is Aro here. I'm really amazing presentation, the demo. I have two simple questions for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one question is like for the Azure Databricks, right? Can we use CLI like command line interface or PowerShell for automation? Is it possible?
Yes, automation is possible. So Azure Databricks, they provide you Databricks CLI itself. There is a native CLI provided by Azure Databricks. There is also the PowerShell module, which is available as part of AZ modules. So I don't remember if it is a default one or a community one, but I came across recently that there is an option available in the PowerShell as well. So in fact, in my project, the current project where I'm working in my office, we are using the Databricks CLI to automate the deployment of the CI/CD pipelines using.
Yeah, thanks. Because this because for automation perspective is quite important to have this thing. And second one, I just want to cut another person. One thing, right? For the you showed about the MS Learn, right? You showed some videos about DP200. Any video content you can refer to for the community who can learn for the Udemy Pluralsight, which they can just learn on how to learn Azure Databricks?
Databricks itself has very good content. So if you go on the Databricks site, right, they have very good content. Databricks, there is also the annual event which happens, the summit, Data Summit, and there is Spark Summit, which happens annually. So you will find a lot of content on YouTube if you just search with Spark. And then Databricks on their own site, they have a lot of content related to these topics that I talked about.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Nilesh, Mandar here. Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Yeah, hi. I have one simple question. If I'm having the Azure trial version, can I do practice for the Databricks for a trial one, Azure trial?
Yes, you get
because I tried to create a workspace cluster, but it's giving error because I'm using the trial one, Azure trial.
I have the subscription. I'm not very sure if there is a limitation, but what you could do if you're not really dependent on Azure is you would get a community version on Databricks.
Yeah, that is okay. Yeah, community, I am able to do that. But when I use Azure trial and I try to create a I am able to create a Azure Databricks workspace. But when I try to create a cluster, sorry, not a workspace, it gives the error because I am using the Azure trial version. That's it. So is it not supported, or there is another issue?
I'm sorry, I'm not aware of this scenario. I will have to find out about it. Did you try raising a support ticket? Maybe there is some issue with the subscription and Microsoft support can help you resolve that.
Okay. Yeah, I will try. Yeah, thanks.
You can try the 14-day trial. I think that might work. There is a
no. That is not a thing. That is not a thing. I'm not talking about Azure Databricks trial version. I'm using the Azure main Azure trial.
Yeah, I got that point. But in the main Azure itself, when you try to create the Databricks workspace, Can you try the premium version, 14 days trial?
Yeah, that I tried. I have in the drop down, I have selected that 14 days database trial version, and after that, I try to create a cluster. It's giving the error, like while creating a cluster only. So,
Okay.
that's the reason.
I can put you in contact
Sorry.
with one person. I forgot his name. I remember he had a similar issue. You can contact me on LinkedIn and I
Okay,
can help
sure,
you
sure. Yeah,
connect with this guy.
yeah, Nilesh. Thanks. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Mandar. Sorry, I didn't know about this one. Yeah. Any other question?
Guys, please help to put the survey, please. So improve that what we can improve on the other sessions is please.
Yeah, Nilesh, one more question. Like Databricks, can you give me the real-time scenario? Like because same thing we can do in Azure Data Factory also, right? The transformation and all that. So is it only for the big data processing we can go for the Databricks, or?
Uh, that's a very good question. If you look at the data factory as well, the code-free approach of Azure Data Factory in fact uses Spark behind the scene.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
it is using Spark, but the control that you get when you use Databricks is much more. You have a lot of flexibility. You can't do everything using the code-free UI of Data Factory. So if you want to do advanced things, then you definitely need to look at the advanced transformations and the features provided by Spark and Databricks. So I would say it's again a question of managed services and having your own infrastructure. So what kind of control you want to have and what kind of detail you want to process, that would be a deciding factor. Databricks would work very well in terms of big data scenario. If you have very small amount of data, I would say just use Data Factory. That would give equivalent performance to you.
Yeah. Thanks, Nilesh. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I don't want to take more time. I think we are already about 15 minutes into the next session. I'm available. So if you have any questions, please put it in the chat and I'll try to answer while the next speaker starts. Thanks, guys. Pio, you are on mute.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Nilesh. So with that, I think Arrow can introduce the next session.
Yeah. I will just go for the next speaker. Right. So we have another speaker, which will be Jasmine, who's talking about the handle with care. And Jasmine, are you here with us?
Yes, I'm here. How are you? How's it going?
Absolutely fine. Thanks for asking. We are absolutely fine in Singapore. How are you doing today?
I'm here in Westar on the other half of the world, but it's a sunny day. It's a nice day, middle of the day, so it will be nice, I believe.
Yeah, great. Yeah, over to you. Please share the screen, please.
Okay, thank you. I'll just start sharing my screen. Okay, do you see the screen?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. I will start my presentation. Okay, we are late for 50 minutes, but it's not a big deal. I believe we can finish with no time, and I hope this session will be interesting for you guys and all other personnel who came here for today to hear something. I hope interesting and new. Okay. Data breaches and preventions. So sorry, something is happening at my screen. Okay, this session is how to handle data with care. What it means? It means how we can try to find the best practices, best strategies, best way to prevent data breaches and mitigate all the steps that they can help us to actually handle our data with care. So in the next 45 minutes, I will start with some soft intro to actually explain why we are speaking about this topic, and in other 2/3 of the presentation, I will try to be more precise and more practical part to actually show you in practical example how you can do that in SQL Server as a database engine. Okay, in the introduction part, First, I will start with top 10 plus 1, and I will explain you what it means. Then we will try to explain how data breach actually occur. So what are the requirements to create the poison environment to actually make your data publicly or some semi-publicly available to the worldwide. And then to the end of this part, we will try to explain different way of scenarios how your data actually can be stored from different angles of the SQL engine. Okay, 10 plus 1. This is a general picture of security from DevSecOps perspective. So development, security, and production. What it means? It means that if you only look from the DevOps angle, you always missing this sec part. Why? Because the programmers and operation part, they always try to push releases faster, make the demo faster. This part of the code need to be done yesterday, and so on. In all this messy story, security is totally way beyond. Actually, if you look at Agile documentation, you will see that security is a non-functional requirement. It means you can use it or not. It's up to you to choose. Now, from this angle, especially from this COVID-19 pandemic story, where we are all at home and try to do our job best and try to adapt in this situation, security is become imperative. So from the perspective of a programmer and the guys and girls who actually create the code, this is some kind of picture that you should pay attention. I will just briefly get the point on the important parts. So the first one, you need to write secure code. You can't write secure code if you don't have enough experience, or if you don't have experience, you have some requirements that before that actually will guide you to create more secure code. Then secure APIs. Be careful with third-party library. Try to implement audit login to actually spot and prevent tampering and accessing to your data to the different part of application. So basically, I believe each of one of you who actually is now on this session can actually recognize his or her role. Where is your part in security? We will now try to see this story from handle data with care angle and see how data engine can actually help you. Okay, how data breach occur? This is one of the scenarios. So there's many of them. But okay. Watch this. There's a bad guy or girl on the left part of the slide on the number 1, where he or she tried to research to find the web pages, API endpoints where actually the user can access the data. Now on the second stage, if there is no direct access, I will just pull my brake now, and I will just try to go a couple of days before. I believe many of you have noticed before a couple of days there is a one wave of messages that actually came on the Google Hangout and Teams. And that messages actually came because zero-day exploit in Firebase engine, and that exploit has give you opportunity to do bad guys or girls to send you a bunch of messages, billions of them, on different kinds of addresses without any kind of authorization. And that's actually how data breach can occur. In that message, in this scenario, it was harmless. It was no malicious. It just show us what can really happen in that part. But if that message was malicious, then I believe today we will speak about some different topic like this. Okay, now in stage 2, attacker try to find another vector to actually attack you, to do email, phone calls, messages, to actually scan the open parts of your applications, web pages, APIs. So actually try to see, is there any weak spot that will show him or show her way to actually penetrate your perimeter. Then when they came inside, It's simple time. It's simple in a matter of time. In which point they will try to find a way to your database, to your backup files, data files, forgotten files, passwords, etc. Somewhere on the hard drives. Then they will put that files on the location from where they can be easily pulled out. They will create a FTP server, they will open port, they will open SSL tunnel, and actually just pull out that data. And actually, this is a school book scenario how data breach can occur. And actually, I will try to give you hints. If data breach occur, how your data can stay safe. Okay, the damage is done. Now you will need to find the way how to handle that scenario, mitigate, lesson learned, and so on. But how your data can be useless to the attacker even if they go down. So another possible scenarios of data stealing, I believe. All of you are here dealing with data in some kind of scenario, and I believe each one of you can recognize that each of these items in this slide can be used to actually pull data, steal data from your native environment. Even we are speaking about cloud, we are speaking about hybrid solution, or we are speaking about on-prem solution. So just five one of them. It's impressive. It's impressive in the quotes in how many cases that the backup files are leave behind. How many times the DBAs or someone else gives inside the team oversized permission. SA, security, admin, and so on, and that permission is stay behind. It becomes forgotten, and that person simply can do anything in any case. And the most important part, social engineering and phishing and backdoor are becoming each day more dangerous, and we need to pay attention on this part especially, and try to educate ourselves and our employees in our teams in this part, because attackers in this area are becoming really good. And you see this small pie chart, some analysis based on information that I find online, official information. 90% of data stealing is actually hacking, and 10% is stealing. In many cases, these 10% are inside job, and I'll try to explain more in detail later. So black statistics, what's it all about? Again, this information can be found on the webpage privacyrights.org. Just pulled out CSV Excel sheet and try to do some Excel magic and try to create your own diagram. And this one actually explains that in all number of reported data breach situation, almost half of them is on the database. And you will see that this risk part, you see there's many attempts, but none of them are successful. So many of them are failed. They false positive. Technology become more powerful. You see the laptops. There's many attempts on laptops, but only 1/4 of them are actually succeed. Other part are simply there is no penetration in that part. So you see that the risk is going down. But if you pay attention and you focus on the database, this red part, you will see that number of attempts is almost the same, but more than 50% of them are successful. It means that we are speaking about encryption, databases, sizes, DevSecOps, and so on. But each day, more and more data are becoming available on the deep web, dark web, and so on. So something is really not wrong in this part, and we will see what it is. And to conclude this part, you see this information can be found on the web page. Informations are beautiful. it's fine, it's still the name. And you can find in data breach part by years in these fancy bubbles, you will see how many companies, big companies, actually lost, and they are losing data each day. You see Facebook, Indian Citizen, Microsoft, Oxidata, Marriott Hotels, Ashley Madison is the download. Yahoo is not visible here. Actually, Yahoo is the winner. Yahoo is actually 2016 or 15, I forget them. You can find on your own two big bubbles actually belong to Yahoo, and each time by billion. So billion. So 2 times billion of different kind of records actually goes out. And see, if you're running some small business, if you're running some medium-sized enterprise business, on this slide you can see that nobody is safe. So Facebook, I believe, has a millions of US dollar actually budget for their security, but they are failing, and Microsoft also. So it's not about the money. Yes, the money, we need the money. We need to pay people. We need to pay knowledge, know-how, but it's not all about the money. It's about awareness, and it's about discipline, and it's about how to implement security from early phases, not just only on the complete. So you actually create a web page, and on the final stage you are done with security. No, it's too late for now. It's too late now. You need to deal with security from intake phases, use cases, modeling, database layer, and all classes, methods, and so on, to actually until the GUI and implement validation part in GUI layer. So it's a process. So it's a process that you need to pay attention. Okay, what is missing? So why this is happening every day, and it's literally every day. We are missing two important parts in this case. So the first one is threat modeling. Threat modeling is almost forgotten part in software analysis and software creation, software engineering section. What it means? It means that we need to inject somewhere in analysis, between analysis phase and code creation phase. We need to inject threat modeling phase, and it means that we'll analyze each use case scenario, each business case, and say these are the potential threats. These are potential weak exploits. For example, login form, SQL injection, cross-site scripting, DDoS attack. You need to pay attention on backup files. You need to encrypt the credit card number inside your database. So you need someone to do that for your team. Maybe someone is from your team, doesn't matter, but you need to pay attention to threat modeling, and it's a basically formalized process that you can do it without any big knowledge. It's just a matter of goodwill, time, and how much you need to invest of your research to actually create good threat model. Based on threat model goes everything else beyond later in other phases of creating a software. And here's one simple example: SQL injection. So the threat modeler is recognized that somewhere in your environment there is a potential SQL injection section. So there's a threat target, mitigation strategy, and techniques. And when the implementer see this table, it's clear. It's clear as a day now in most time. Just use it. Don't try ad hoc SQL code inside C#, Java, Python, or whatever. Use procedures, use parameters, and try to avoid SQL injection. How much is it possible from your perspective? We will never create secure code 100%. But we are achieving. We are trying to be more close to that number. So that's one part is missing, and I believe if you are coming from different case of businesses, I believe that each of you can analyze now in 1 minute. Does your organization whatsoever actually implement threat modeling as a one of the key phases in software development process? So other part that is missing is that missing as a formal part. There is many cybersecurity departments inside the company, but always security is looked as expensive, as a cost, not an investment, and that will be changed very soon in this post-pandemic world, because we are all online. Everything is online. Schools, universities, jobs, security, voting, e-health, everything is online. So security become imperative. If it is not, then I'm afraid what kind of world will be in 2 or 3 years without in the security scenario. So you need SISO. You need the person or persons who will create strategy for your security. Then implement to the department, security specialist in app security, network security, ethical hacker, red team, blue team. To be honest with you, if you achieve to create red and blue team inside your security department, you have chance to win this war, because red team are the bad guys inside your company, and blue team are the good guys. So actually, the red team try to penetrate your application, your security, everything. And blue team is trying to defend it. So it's better that your red team find a zero-day exploit inside your application than some non-ethical person outside in wild web. And finally, you need to have incident response team, the team that actually jumps in when something happens. And something will happen in some scenario, in some ratio. Maybe it's small, or it will be, God forbid, big. But you need to have team ready with steps A, B, C, D, F, G, D to actually know what they need to do to stop incident, mitigate, and create report with lesson learned. Okay, so now after this introduction part, let's try to jump in more concrete world, and actually to database world, and to handle data with care. Yes, and to see how SQL Server, this is a SQL Server chapter, try to see how SQL Server can help you. And believe me, SQL Server is not that because I use SQL Server. I believe here all love SQL Server, but SQL Server is now in this moment most secure database in the world, and period, on-prem, hybrid, or in cloud variant. Okay. Database server security model. So it's very granular. What it means? It means that you can start security from login. So from Yasmin user. Yasmin will be out try to log himself on SQL Server, and based on that authentication, I will be authorized to go on the server side, to database side, or mixed side permissions. So I can do different ways or scenarios. What is the problem here? The problem here is if you give this server side permission, that person or team have really huge rights: backup files, configuration, server side. That person can, for example, stop audit logging, do some dirty stuff, extra data, and start audit logging again. Can access to backup files from tapes, from DVDs, from CDs, from USB, from network shares, whatsoever, and copy it on a different location. So you need to be very careful in this part. On the data part, database side, each user with permission to select data, to read data, to delete data is a potential threat, even inside the application part or outside of that perimeter. But there's also one thing where in most cases administrators in cloud or on-prem simple forgot or does not pay a good enough attention in security after and during installation. What it means? Here's an example. This is a part. These are the pictures during installation phase, and I believe many of us will in this part will not pay good enough attention. If you enter mixed mode, maybe you will not create strong enough SA account password. So in the case when someone steals the hashes from master database, weak password can be easily broken. And don't be fooled with the story 8 characters, 12 characters, 16, 32. Yes, but if these are the words from dictionaries or mixed words, it can be easily broken. Even if you create some really strong password, for example 16 characters, in this new unsecure world, hackers or state-sponsored crimes, this is a whole different level of security and unsecurity. They can create the cluster of the very strong graphic cards, NVIDIA GPU with hundreds of GPU cores and thousand of GPU cards on the price scale is really cheap. It's really cheap in cooperation with some supercomputer, with some Cray and so on. But these cards are really they are killers. They are killers from the hashes, and they can easily broke even the strong passwords. So just need to pay attention to that. Also, you need to be very careful on the network libraries. In different version of SQL Server, standard version, enterprise, developer version, web version, different set of services and ports are open or enabled by default. So be careful. If you use only TCP/IP, there is no need for shared memory or name pipes. Why? It's just two endpoints in your security that you need to pay attention, and you will forget on them. Believe me. And also try to enforce password policy. Yes, it's boring. The user will complain, but who cares? You are responsible for security. You need to pay attention to that because you will be responsible and accountable on that part. Also, threats from unauthorized users. So inner threats inside your organization. This 10% from the pie chart before 10 minutes ago, if you remember, this inner threats is more dangerous than outside threats, because you will invest the money, education to defend your company on the network level, firewall, threat detection systems, hackers outside, inside. You will just put all your military strength to actually pay attention on outside of your castle. But inside the castle, there is a potential threats and security, because this person have the authorization. They can do anything they want inside your authorization package. That can be read, write, delete, and so on. And that will give you false sense of security. So simple user role is not enough to ensure security. There's a new wave of security that is coming in this brave new security after COVID, and it's called zero trust model. Zero trust model will give you decent level of security, because it will look to your employee on the same level as a user outside of your organization. So it will be really rigorous authentication and all checking inside your company on each action. Because simple, look now, your company is how to say, distributed all over the world. All the Bosnia, India, China, America, Russia, Middle East, and so on. You have employees on all 5 continents. It's a problem. Do you use VPN? How they can access your data? How they can access your databases? How they will do their daily job if you give them all rights? So it's a really minefield, and you will believe me, you'll be hearing a lot more in coming days on zero trust model. And here's an example of simple read. I believe all of you will know that. If you give read permission, that user will have access to all the data, last name, first name, credit card, password, and so on and so on. So you will need to give them explicit denied on the tables where that user will not have access. And even if there's a need, you will need to go to on column level and forbid that access. It will be ideal to create views and just give the right to views or procedures to actually, if you want more faster way. And believe me, you need to use encryption all of the way to defend your sensitive data inside your DB, and I will show you practically later in this session. How physical data can be stolen? You see, data files, backup files. In my practice as a consulting, as a last 20 years in data security area, in many scenarios, employee intentionally or not for example, bring the USB drive with backup of their database outside job and bring the home to continue to work, to steal, to sell. Simply forgot. And that is the problem. You forgot that USB drive in coffee shop. You lose him on the street. Someone will find it, and someone will actually know how to deal. And that is I don't know, backup of your 20 years of data, your customers, and simply goes out. Part two of data stealing is when someone who is not inside DB role can access your data. Simple. If you have the administrators or DevOps people with strong enough permission on file system, OS, or network, can hook and try to steal data. So if someone, for example, steal the password or hack the password or guess the password of your personnel. So it's not always in a threat. So I can steal your password and I becoming in a threat remotely, but in a threat. So you need to increase security in notification part. So 2FA is ideal. So in each open session to the system and out of the system, user should be ask for extra factor of security just to be sure that you're not relying your security only on passwords. Okay, so mitigation on all these steps, on all these scenarios is very simple. So the first, you need to be aware. Your team need to be aware that security, cybersecurity is not a fairy tale, is not non-functional requirement. It's a reality. It's here. It will be stay here, and it will become a more increasing and demanding skill in following years. So, for example, table and or column encryption. So SQL Server are giving you a really huge, wide spectrum of security, symmetric, asymmetric, certificate, TD, always on. Believe me, on-prem, on cloud. I will show you how to actually you can encrypt data on the column level, and how that scenario is applicable on-prem, on hybrid, or on cloud solution. TD will defend your database if it's stolen. If someone steal your backup file, your data, your log files, and they are under the TD layer, so use TD, that person in attach process or restore process will get message security thumbprint, missing certificate, and similar, and it means sorry, but you can't access this data even if you have physical access to that files. Only solution to achieve that you have all layer of security keys, and I will show you later on presentation. You need you need to use also encryption outside of the DB world. So volume encryption, BitLocker if you use Windows, VeraCrypt if you're using Windows, Linux, macOS, and so on. Why? Because if someone steals your disk, if someone get physical access to your server, to environment, then this all encryption will fall down, and this is part actually defending you in this black scenario. Also, if you use zip zip files, 7-zip, WinRAR, WinZip, and so on, and you encrypt sensitive data, backup files, CSV Excel sheets with classified data, please use passwords. Please, because this, especially 7-zip is open source solution. It's free, and it use AES-256 military grade encryption. So there is no stronger in this area. Also, try to limit number of admin staff. If you have, I don't know, 25, 50 administrators inside your organization, it's cool, it's nice, but do you need them? If you can handle a job with 5, please decrease that number. Maybe you have 50 of them and you don't know that. How? Because these 5 are giving permission outside of control, outside of strategy to other persons inside the teams. Why? Because this person needs to do their jobs, and this is a way, and this is the only way to do it easy. Don't call me, don't ping me each time when you need access. Who will later, when you finish, deny that permission or revoke? Yes, it's a job, it's a task, but you need to pay attention also on that section. Also, in any scenario when something goes wrong, and it will go wrong in some situation, audit policy is a key part. If you don't have audit logs inside DB, inside tables, inside your system, inside your network, and you with cross redirection try to see what is happening, recreate the case, you will never find and you will never learn what is happening inside your security potential breach situation. Even if you have audit policy, you will need to have a backup audit policy for extra security. Why? Because a person with maximum access rights can actually falsify the logs, can delete the logs. So you need to watch the watcher and try to create. It's called bookkeeping. The primary log and 2 or 3 different logs on 3 different locations, and they are in sync. So when you check this log, they all 4 or 3 need to show you same state, same hashes, same checksum. If someone is actually tampering and trying to tamper these official logs, then these 2 or 3 will show you that something is not right in that scenario. And also, please don't carry backups on your laptops, USB, SD cards, official backups or production backups. Okay, and SQL Server encryption. I told you before that there is no, in my perspective, maybe I'm wrong. So please correct me after the session if I'm wrong. If you know that there's a better solution, that SQL Server have and I hope will have best encryption capabilities now inside DB, because it's a hierarchy. What it means, you see on this scheme, there's a 3-layer of security: operating system, SQL Server, and DB level. So when SQL Server is installed on Azure as a service, or on-prem or hybrid solution, it will create a service master key. So data protection API inside Windows will create this SM key. That SM key will be used each time when you create database master key for each DB. And that database master key is actually encrypted with SM key. So you will need SM key from the service to open the DM key, and that DM key will give you access to DB. So it means if you pull out from this middle layer, if you detach DB, if you steal the backup and try to restore and attach on your home PC or on your whatsoever, without this SM key is simply useless. So each key above simply defend the key below. And story goes on. DB master key is used to create different way of keys and certificates inside the database to defend on the column level, on the DB level, on the always on level, TD level, name it. Certificate, asymmetric, symmetric key, so you can create different security scenarios depending on your concrete business needs. So again, if you just pull out this table as a copy paste from screen inside the Excel sheet without symmetric key, certificate, DB key, SM key, this data doesn't mean anything to you. Okay, and these are the encryption algorithms in symmetric key and asymmetric. Briefly, symmetrically, you use same key for encryption and decryption, and it's a more fastest way. So AES is advanced encryption standard. You have it in three lengths, and believe me, you will need to use always the best 256, and 256 is the strongest. Maybe in some cases, if you have really huge load, many transactions per second, you will have decreased performance, but with optimization and more CPU power, and even if you use cloud with some scaling up, you can simply forget that part. And asymmetric key encryption, you use two keys. One key is for encryption and a second key for decryption. So two key scenario. But in SQL Server, asymmetric key is generally used to defend symmetric key. So it will give you extra layer of security. So you will use RSA, I don't know, 2048 to encrypt IS-256, and that IS-256 will actually encrypt your data. So just an extra layer of security. And if I need to give an example, banking sector, if you're stolen credit card numbers, special authentication number from users that needs to be used from credit cards, but I don't know if bank try to store the data. I believe it's illegal, but if they use it, please don't use anything less to protect those data without RSA and ISA in combination. And this is a very simple example, and we will see later in the demo, that when you create symmetric key and you apply on the column level, and you see this is the column first name from Adventure Works database 2014 or 17, doesn't matter, it's the same. You see that this data doesn't mean anything. Yes, you can use brute force attack to try to attack, but if your password is weak, and if you now I did not mention the really important part when you deal with encryption, and it's key management. You need to handle your keys. You need to pay attention who has the access to keys, where are the backup of the keys, and who can actually use that keys. Scenario one, if you have disaster recovery solution, you need to have the backup of your keys, because you will lose your own data without your keys. And also you need to log each access to those keys, because they are the last line of defense in this business scenario. Second example of encryption in SQL Server, I believe many of you know this feature, is always encrypted. Why is there a need for always encrypted when you have encryption inside the database? Simple, because DBA or DBAs or the users with the huge access right are the weakest point in security. So DBA can access all the key levels from the service level all the way down to the table level. So yes, they can do it because why? They have access. So simple, your security will now falls on the shoulders of the ethical principles of the person. So is he or she ethical or not? This variable in the equation that you simply don't need. So always encryption is a life-saving feature. Why? Because encryption and decryption is pulled out from the server side and injected on the client side. So the data is stored in an encrypted form on DB server, and the keys for decryption and encryption are on the client side. So party scenario. So subject name for customer where SSN is equal to some parameter 1.1.2.2.3, and this parameter goes before left the trusty boundary of the client. Azure.net will find the key because this feature is turned on. Will get this at SSN, encrypt that part and send to server. So you see when this query comes out, when this query actually goes outside and it's executed on the server side, it will become select name from customer where SSN is equal some cipher text. And this cipher text is actually text inside your DB. So and SQL Server will find this cipher text, and it will bring back as the result set back to you, and all of the way is encrypted form. So when it came to your Azure.net library, it will use the key for decryption, and you will see that SSN 112333 is actually Wayne Jefferson. So in any case, DB or database does not know what is inside your DB if you use this feature. It's called end-to-end encryption. So it's actually there is not anything strongest in encryption as an implementation inside DB comparing to other security features. So, but this feature is not so ideal. Why? Because there's a two way to use always encrypted, randomized and deterministic. The first one will always encrypt on a different way, same string. You see, encrypt all the way from 1 to 9. One time is 0x17. Now, if you repeat, it will be 099. Next time 05, 06, 015, A, B, C, D, F, G, D. So each time you will get the different string, and that's cool, and that's secure. It will give you much bigger sense and real security. But you are really limited. How you can search the data of subject name where last name is equal to what? Because my name Yasmin each time will be encrypted different way on different way. So I will need to know all the combination to retrieve all Yasmins inside DB. So yes, this is the most secure way, but you are really limited with SQL operations. But second part, when you use deterministic encryption, each time same string will be encrypted the same. So encrypt all the way from 1 to 9 will be 0x85, 0x85, and so on. So now when I say give me where last name is equal to that, I can send as in this scenario. In this scenario here, you see that this SSN is encrypted, and I will get all Wayne Jeffersons if they exist inside DB. So in this case, I can use SQL Server statements and where clauses, join operation, distance, group by, and so on. So I have more flexibility to operate my data, but is less secure because it will become the pattern. Because if attacker listening your communication, he or she will get the pattern on long term if you use same data in brute force attack scenarios. And almost on the end, before demo, I told you before, if you don't use SQL Server features, if you are too lazy, if you don't have the money, it's not your scenario, but you need to backup the files, please use only this. It's better than nothing. You see that this is 7-zip, and this is some Stack Overflow open source DB, and you see that encryption method is AES-256. The strongest method that you actually pay in SQL Server, you pay in Oracle DB, in Azure, whatsoever, you get it here for free. So you can always say right-click, encrypt this backup file AES-256, and you will get the same level of encryption as you use in SQL Server. Yes, key management and so on is less secure, but on the first grabbing your data, it will be useless for the attackers. I will show you one demo, how to encrypt column live, and if you need to access all other scripts, and there's I believe 6 or 7 of them on my GitHub repository, just enter my name, Yasmin Zemovits, and you will see different libraries on GitHub, and one of them especially is important for this session is SQL Server cryptography. So if you need to access all these demos and use them on their own, please adopt them, please share them. I'm here to share the know-how, to share the knowledge, to help people to be more secure. Okay, I will now jump in my management studio. Okay, this is a simple and free demo. I will create a CryptoDB. I will create CryptoDB, and after this DB is created, now this DB is guarded with service master key. Now I will create DB master key. So I'm inside, you see, CryptoDB, and I will create master key for this database. Okay, now I will try to see is this service key, is this key available to my database, and I see yes, DB master key. You see some metadata about the key, AS date of creation, modified date, and so on. Now, some simple scenario. I will create a simple table. Customer ID, first name, last name, credit card, expiration month, expiration year, and so on. And I will create a certificate, and this certificate will be guarded with this master key. See, now I will create encryption key. Buckle up to go. So you see, master key, service master key, DB master key, certificate, and AES for 256 to actually encrypt it. So four layers of security I have implemented now in this demo to guard my data. So attacker will need to have access to all 4 of them to try to do something. So I will now open the key, and I will use simple data from Adventure Logs with simple ETL procedure to get the data. And you see, I'm using function encrypt by key, key GUID, column name, and just using some cast function to actually adapt this data before storing inside new table. Okay, there you see almost 20,000. You see, it's fast. One second in simple ordinary laptop. Now imagine in some I know Xeon environment, cloud, and so on. It's fast. So I will now close the key. Always close the key. Always inside your code after the usage, close the key, because if the key stays in memory, in scenarios when system breaks down, blue screen of that, something goes wrong. Memory dumps are stored on disks. In these memory dumps, you can find anything from BitLocker keys, symmetric keys, password key, Outlook key, G Drive key, Gmail key, and so on. So it's a gold mine for attackers. So if someone can get access to your memory dumps, believe me, you are byte exposed in this case. So always close your keys after usage. So if I try to see this table, you see now last name is simply, and other columns now down there below are encrypted, and from the attacker perspective, this scenario is simply doesn't have sense. So I will now open the key again, and I will now compare side by side these two columns. You see Sanchez, encryption Sanchez, Duffy, encryption, Tomborello, Walters, Ericsson, Miller, and so on and so on. Okay, and this is a quick demo. I believe each one of you is recognized this as a potential to actually defend your data. So I believe I'm close enough to conclude this session and to be available for Q&A. So this small info about me. If you have any questions regarding security, cybersecurity, database, please contact me on LinkedIn. I'm SISO in my company. Also, I'm teaching students for 20 years and so on. And I'm Microsoft MVP 11 years in the role. And also, one good resource for you on same GitHub. I can show you before a couple of minutes. You can find my book, Securing SQL Server 2012, but this book I give for free as a PDF in open source. Please use it, share it. This book is full of examples of authentication scenarios, encryptions, database forensics, and so on. Simply, you can use it in any case you want, and please share this resource as many people, because I am enjoying when someone use that knowledge, because it's some kind gives you a nice feeling that you're helping people in this part. Okay. Keep calm. Well, we steal your data. Little joke on the end. And please, after this pandemic madness is passed away, this is a picture of my Mostar and famous old bridge in Mostar. Please Google it, and you'll see that this attraction is attracting almost 1 million tourists each year in Bosnia. So please, if you have a time and options when this passed away, please come here, and please contact me for the coffee or lunch in Mostar if you can here. And thank you for your attention. This slide, I will now go back here in Teams and to see is there any questions, comments, and so on.
That's an awesome picture, Jasmine.
Thank you.
There was a question earlier. When you showed the data breaches, the orange ones, is there a significance on the orange and blue color for the bubbles, or
no? It's I simply just marked